everyone, it's Jessie from b.a.r.e Flower Farm, and today I have a guest, my very own husband, Eric. So Eric is on this podcast because we are going to be talking about our experience with using the sod cutter, specifically in the context of lifting the sod in order to prepare our field for flower farming. And because Eric basically did all of the work with the machinery and there was a lot of thought process going behind it, which honestly, I couldn't find that much on YouTube, we decided we want to make a video about it. So Eric, first and foremost, what did you think about the machine yesterday?
I think that it exceeded my expectations overall, and that I wasn't expecting it to cut as effectively as it did, but it maybe cut a little too well. But overall, I'm pleased with the performance of the machine.
So it's kind of funny because I don't think I had low expectations of this machine, but clearly Eric went into this, as we do with most things in life, being a little bit more dubious.
I think I was afraid that it wouldn't cut consistently. It would cut like we'd be ripping out pieces, like just kind of like here ad hoc pieces, and it wouldn't actually cut consistent rolls to the point that we'd be able to roll it. But again, it exceeded my expectations.
So let's take a step back and actually talk a little bit about how we even learn about a sod cutter and just the various types of field preparation techniques I was exploring. For us, we really buy into this no-till philosophy. The issue is that we literally just moved into this house about 2 weeks ago. So doing no-till was just unrealistic from the perspective of you really need time for that cardboard to break down, for those weeds to die off. And then you also need a lot of compost to put on top. And it wasn't the compost piece that was the bottleneck for us. It was really the time portion of it. And if we do expand our field, I would expect us to actually employ that method. So since we couldn't do the typical no-till method, we wanted to disrupt as little as possible what we had in the field. And we knew coming in that we were inheriting a field where the prior owner didn't really care much for landscaping and doing much yard work, right? So we knew that this guy had never used pesticides, herbicides, all the sides, right? If anything, he was trying to get his grass to grow slower. So we knew that we were working with relatively healthy soil and probably had some good soil aggregates as a result. So when I looked into just all of the various things out there on YouTube, I came across someone who was using a sod cutter or a sod lifter machine. And that's how I got down into my rabbit hole of doing some more research. And upon further research, I realized that, our nearest Home Depot actually rents it by the half day or by the full day. You could even rent it by the week or by the month. And it cost us a total of $133 for the full day. This includes taxes. This includes insurance that I bought on the machine in case something happened to it. But we learned that they don't really rent this thing out that much, right?
They said they had 2 of them, and it was one of their least rented machines. So.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I consider ourselves pretty lucky that they had this in stock, but it seems like that most Home Depots do carry a type of sod cutter with them. So we wanted to lift the sod up because then it would give us the option of either laying compost on top or tilling in the compost. And so at the end of the day, when we lifted up the sod, I think the really surprising thing that we found was the amount of earthworms, right? I mean, I don't think I've ever seen so many earthworms in my...
I mean, as you saw too, when you were rolling up the soil, that as you were rolling it up, you could see the earthworms kind of scurrying as they were being disrupted.
Yep.
And even like trying to get back into the ground and it was every single roll as you were rolling it up.
And we have, I guess, relatively more clay type of soil. So I was actually afraid that it would be a little too compact. But after seeing all those earthworms and even seeing the holes that came out because they were burrowing through that layer when we lifted a sod, it's really convinced me to not till at all. First, I don't want to kill the earthworms. And then second, I don't want to destroy those aggregates that they created, right? And that is really, really important in the world of no-till to not disrupt the aggregates that are already there. So, enough about the earthworm, the no-tilling piece. We'll actually talk a little bit more about general field prep in another video, but I wanted to focus this video specifically on using the sod cutter machine. So Eric, you talked a little bit about how you had some reservations before. Did you have any reservations about handling and operating this machine?
I think no. I mean, my main concern was actually just the performance of the machine and would it be able to consistently cut with hopefully minimal effort and let the machine do the work.
Yep. So a lot of what happens in life is I find something of interest on YouTube and I present it to Eric. And Eric figures out how we do it, especially around the logistics, right? So let's talk a bit about how we actually transported this thing, because I knew from the reading that I did that this was not a light machine.
Yeah.
They say it's about like 300 pounds, I think it was. And it's very, it's an odd shape in the sense that it's like, it's hard for two people to even just lift it. So how did you?
I mean, I would say 300 pounds in the grand scheme of things. It was, if it was the proper shape, like a barbell or something, that you and I together might be able to safely lift it and move it into something. But I mean, before I answer my question, before I said anything, what was your idea in terms of transporting it?
Well, we do have a pickup truck. So in my head, that was like step one, check.
Yeah.
Right. It's better than having like my CRV transport it.
Yeah.
And then I thought maybe we could get another person at Home Depot to help us lift it up. And then we would figure it out when we got here. We would muscle it through.
So I think we've learned from the guy that came to pick up our old refrigerator the weekend before, which in a way is easier to lift. It's more box shape.
Yeah.
But weighs about the same thing. I think a fridge is 300 to 350 pounds. This one is about the same weight, but just awkwardly shaped, not really great places to grab and lift it. I knew that the idea of lifting it, getting something this heavy and so awkwardly shaped 4 feet off the ground into a pickup truck and not ruining your back or something prior to actually ruining your back while doing the actual work was going to be a problem. So I came up with the solution.
Which is to buy a trailer. Or I guess you could always rent a trailer.
I mean, the idea was, I guess the original idea was to rent the trailer, but I think thinking long term, given what we did spend on the trailer and our future needs for a trailer, we saw ourselves recouping the cost of what would be multiple iterations of trailer rentals.
Yeah.
Eventually making that up by purchasing one and also just saving the inconvenience of having to go pick up and drop off a trailer.
Yeah. So it's safe to say that if you want to transport a machine like this, you should be thinking about renting a pickup truck along with a trailer.
Yeah.
So the pickup truck to tow the trailer.
I would say that something of this weight and this awkwardly shaped, the idea of lifting it off the ground is completely off the table if you at least want to do it safely and not throw out your back, or because could two people lift it up into a pickup truck?
Oh, two big guys could do it.
Two guys might be able to do it, but
the pickup truck bed is actually really high.
It is really high, and to do it safely, and the risk of either damaging the equipment, the truck, or injuring yourself, it's not worth it. So I mean, with the trailer that we got, we were able to push it up and maybe lifting it and giving it a little bit of help. No one needed to actually lift the entire thing off the ground.
Yep. It was funny because when I arrived at Home Depot and I checked in for my reservation, the first thing the guy said, because he looked at me, he's like, "How are you getting that thing home?" I was like, "Don't worry, I got a solution." So we got it home and it was pretty easy, right? Like, I mean, the towing itself obviously was fine. But then when we got here, Eric was able to drive the trailer literally to the site of where the field was. We rolled it off. And then we even took this thing to the front of the house to put in some landscaping because there's very minimal landscaping right now. And Eric, again, was able to put it back onto the trailer, drive out the pickup truck, offload it, and then we were able to return it back to Home Depot. So we needed it for a full day, which was good because I feel like we really maximized our time with it.
And I think another thing that I suggested when we did the rental was don't pick it up first thing in the morning and try to return it by the end of the day. We actually picked it up the night before, knowing we weren't going to be doing much work that night, but allowed us to actually, once we woke up and got started with our day, to just start with the work as opposed to connecting the trailer, heading down to Home Depot, bringing it back, figuring out. We did a couple test cuts the night before just to kind of get an idea of how it would work. but it allowed us, long story short, to just start the work that
Yep.
morning.
And if you are renting from Home Depot, they count the full 24 hours. It doesn't matter if it starts on a different day. So we rented it at like 5:30 and we
Brought it back.
at like 5.
Yep.
All right. So now that we got the machine home, let's talk about operating it and that experience.
So I would say in terms of it actually, the cutting itself, it was very effective. It was able to, once we got the hang of it, we were able, it cut consistently at a consistent depth and fully, separated the sod from the soil below. So
Yep.
I think from those regards, it performed very well. And with the particular machine that we rented,
Which is a
Yep.
right? Class in 18.
We were able to set the cutting depth of the machine. Now we set it, I think in hindsight, I don't know if we would have done it again. I think you like the depth that we cut. I think we cut it about 2 inches, which actually gives you a little bit of an inset into the ground for the farm.
Yep.
But cutting 2 inches versus, I think we cut it about an inch when we were cutting the soil for the front, just for our planter area. You and I both know, rolling both of those and transporting rolls of that an extra inch of soil adds a lot of weight.
And this is why it's called a sod cutter. It only cuts the sod. It doesn't roll it for you.
Yep.
And to Eric's point, you hypothetically want to cut it as deep as the sod cutter can let you cut, just so that you can get rid of those roots, right? But realistically, when you then try to roll up the sod, that inch difference was huge between 1 inch and 2 inches, to the point where we were cutting the sod to basically a yard and then rolling it up. And
I'd say each one's 50, 60 pounds.
It's really heavy. It rained a bit, so it made it heavier. And we're talking about 40-foot by 90-foot area. So you start adding that up and it is a lot of sod.
And a lot of weight.
And a lot of weight, correct. Yep.
So I think that in terms of the 2 inch depth, it allowed for, the deeper you go, the more clean of a cut you can get, because even one other thing I experienced was as the soil undulates up and down, and where there's significant recesses in the soil, there were at times where it didn't cut as clean, and we actually had to rip out some patches manually. But I think there is a sweet spot, hopefully, between, or I guess you just got to figure out what you prioritize, because we cut the soil a lot thinner in the front, made rolling it up easy, made moving it easy, but it didn't cut as clean as a 2 inch cut.
And a part of that is also just what is underneath your soil. So we're really lucky that in the field, it really is just soil, even if it's hard clay soil. But in the front, for whatever reason, closer to the house, there were a lot of rocks underneath it, and that is where that sod cutter didn't really perform as well, obviously, because it's trying to cut through rock, right? So Eric had to go a lot more shallow for those. But that is another thing to consider is, we just recently moved from a new construction house. It was a townhouse, but in a lot of those situations, they fill the house with a really cheap fill, and sometimes it's filled with a lot of rocks. So if that is your situation, a sod cutter might not actually be a good alternative for you. Yep. All right. So anything else on the handling of the machine piece?
I would say 2 things about it. One was actually the throttle and where you give it gas to go and to cut. That a kind of critique of the machine itself. The throttle was like, you actually had to really squeeze it in order to make it go, and just that constant squeezing and gripping of the throttle was actually quite fatiguing as you're doing row by row with that and the machine vibrating. So that was number 1. Number 2 was also, it takes, because of the undulate on perfectly flat soil, I think it cuts pretty straight, but with undulations and trying to match your cut in the previous row, there's actually quite a bit of muscling of holding it straight, steering it back, because the machine has one direction, forward. It does not excel at turning.
Correct.
So that was quite a bit of manual effort, just trying to keep that cut right next to the other cut and keep it a straight line. And also at the end of the cut, there is an art to turning it around, because again, that machine is not designed to turn.
Correct. And so we prioritize cutting in the longer direction. So I was saying it's a 40 by 90 foot field.
Yep.
We cut basically in the 90 foot direction.
So less turns.
Less turns for
Yep.
that very reason. First night we cut the opposite way and it was like, this is too many turns. Yep. Perfect. All right, now let's actually talk about the prep, or I guess the clearing of the field itself. Do you think it took longer than what you expected?
I think the cutting went faster than expected.
Yes, the cutting you finished within an hour.
Yeah, that was actually pretty quick. It's the rolling of the sod and what to do with it after that posed to be a problem.
Yes. So one thing about us is we are very frequent CrossFitters. We have like a garage gym and we do a lot of what they call functional fitness, so a lot of lifting, a lot of weight work. And we hadn't worked out for 2 days in a row, which is a lot
for us.
A lot for us. So Eric, on Friday night, we did this on Saturday. On Friday night, was like, do you think we'll work out tomorrow? And in my head, I was like, are you crazy? But in my head, I was like, well, we'll probably finish by like 2, 3 p.m. So I guess we can get a workout in. And then we did not finish by 3 p.m.
Again, the rolling of the sod, I don't know about what your expectations were, but that took a lot longer than expected. And I did not, again, I don't know if we were to do this again, if I would cut at a lower depth, but the depth at which we cut at and the resulting weight of, because it's heavier to move the sod, it's heavier to roll the sod. We gotta roll shorter pieces to keep the weight down. That definitely, if we were to cut at a lower depth, would have sped the process up.
Well, I also think if I were to do this over, I might reconsider not cutting all of it and instead marking out where the pathways would be.
Oh, and leaving the grass.
And leaving the grass there. And then, being okay with just having grass there and getting a push mower to clean that area versus right now we're going to wood chip it. I think it's fine at the end of the day because I was also thinking that the wood chip alternative leaves me more room if I want to expand. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, like that was a lot of sod. And I mean, common sense, if you're going to remove the grass, that's how much grass you're going to be left with. And for whatever reason, it just looks like it's twice the amount when you actually roll it all up and it's dirt versus if it's all just green. Yep. I remember there's a certain point where I looked at this as like, did I bite off more than I could chew? And the reason why we started off with a 40 by 90 foot plot wasn't because I plan on using all of it. I want to do some cover cropping. I want to give some of the ground some time to fallow, and I want to do it right? Like I don't want to do intensive growing from the get-go. It's possible that I will need the entire space in a couple of years, but in year one, it's just way too big for someone like me to take on. We will be putting some like vegetables, tomatoes, all that stuff, but at the end of the day, I just want to make sure that I'm giving the ground proper time to rest and allowing that time for the cover crop versus constantly turning the beds and only putting on compost, which, is fine, but it's not a great regenerative way to feed nutrients back to the soil. So that was the reason for that size. But I think that the other thing for me was just, it took some time for us to get efficient and figure out a process for, the cutting, right? Like using a shovel to cut it, how to use a shovel, what the length of the sod should be, even the rolling technique, right?
I mean, I think everything as we did, if you looked at our technique at the first cut, at the first roll, and as we progressed, we kind of learned how to do it and how to become efficient. But we rolled the last 4 rows in like, I would say 15, 20 minutes.
Correct. Yep.
I think we were rushing
because the sun was going down and we were hungry. But if you've seen my videos before, you'll know that like scaling things and being more efficient are big objectives for not just me, but also for Eric. And so for us, we were out there for a while, right? So from the get-go, we were looking at ways to how do we become more efficient at this? And, we got to a point where it made sense for one of us to just take the shovel and cut that sod. Eric even figured out if you use some of your foot weight and get that shovel and wiggle it a bit, that was a much better way to cut, even though it was a little bit slower. And then the other person would follow behind by rolling it. And then every so often we would switch. So then I would roll and then Eric would do that. And At a certain point, I asked Eric, like, which one's the worst job? And what was your response?
They're equally bad.
They're equally bad in different ways.
ways.
Yeah, I mean, it gets to the point where, like, both of us have blisters on our hands from the shovel. The rolling piece is just, I hope you do a lot of squats. And it's back.
It's backbreaking work.
Yeah, it's backbreaking work, right? So if you're not used to squatting, you're not used to like lifting things up in a deadlift type of position, you might not be mobile the next day.
Yep.
So I think we both made it out like relatively unscathed. We're not sore to the point where, we should be, because we do those movements often. But I think realistically, if we did not work out the way that we do, there's no way we could have done that whole thing in a day.
Yep.
So again, right, like depends on the size that you're looking to clear. But for a 40 by 90 foot bed, it took us from 10 a.m. to, let's just say 4 p.m. because we did part of the front, including a 1 hour break. And then everything else was kind of like nonstop, right?
Yep.
All right. So to round out this video, let's talk about some takeaways and tips. To me, this is a 2+ person job. Again, depending on the size that you're trying to clear, but what are your thoughts on, for us, that 40 by 90?
I mean, I think by talking in terms of economies of scale, I think that having a second person more than doubled the production rate, because if you were to be doing this, specifically the sod rolling part, you would have to take turns both rolling and cutting the pieces. And
that would significantly slow
there's
down.
Transition times in between. You kind of get good at, if you're just rolling piece after piece, you kind of get into a flow. So I think at minimum a 2-person job in terms of trying to be efficient.
Yeah, so do not attempt to do this by yourself, even if you are a strong, fit man, because you might be able to get the machinery down, but probably not the rolling piece efficiently. I think our biggest mistake was not thinking about what to do with the sod.
I think, again, going back to this concept of the depth of cutting, I don't know if we would have cut at that depth again, just knowing how heavy it is, because I think we have a place to put it. It's a matter of getting it there.
Yeah.
And I think like part of me right now is itching to actually start moving it, but it's so muddy right now. If we keep driving the truck and the trailer back and forth, we're gonna have a mud pit.
My mom was FaceTiming with me today. She goes, "Why don't you just move the sod to the side?" I was like, "Easier said than done."
You can, but that just puts it to the side. So,
exactly. So alongside with that, one of the reasons why we can't really move it is because, of course, yesterday was beautiful, but for the next couple of days, actually the next 3 days, it's going to be raining. And today it was drizzling, but it was enough for it to still be wet. I mean, we had a person who came with a U-Haul truck, and we got maybe 50, 60 rolls of sod in there, I would say. And that was like a giant mess, to the point where we stopped having people come over just because, we are driving through the grass. It's very muddy. You need four-wheel drive. But this stuff is going to take time to clear. And I started putting it on Facebook Marketplace around 3 p.m. yesterday. If you're going to do this, let me tell you, either put a nominal fee for charging, or you expect people to message you. I had over 3,500 clicks on that. I've never gotten that much
on free sod.
On free sod. And it was I was, I don't know, giving out free money. It felt, like the guy who came today with his girlfriend, they live about 45 minutes away. They rented a U-Haul truck. They went through all this effort. And then he initially said, "I'll take all of it." And I was like, "Good luck." Because I think he might have had the truck to fit it potentially, but just not the manpower to load it. So, so we'll be having some more people come in. It's going to take some while to get rid of it, which also means it's going to take time for me to then put stuff into the field, right? So just something to factor. And then I mentioned before that this is only going to work if you have a field that is true soil, whether it's clay or sandy. You obviously don't want it to be super rocky.
Because the blade it's not really a blade. It's just it's a flat piece of steel that vibrates and is able to work itself between the roots and the below soil. So it's not really cutting anything necessarily.
Correct.
But it's not designed to go through rocks and gravel.
So anything else that you would say around the sod cutting piece?
Protect your back.
Protect your back. Yeah. So all in all, I mean, I'm pretty satisfied with where we ended up. Sometimes I laugh that Eric agrees to do this stuff because it's back-breaking work. I mean, it's a lot of manual labor and you are exhausted after. But, you know, I think that exercise alone, even though it looks like we have a sod farm right now, really makes it feel more legitimate that there's going to be like a flower farm back there.
Yep.
Yeah. So I will have another video specifically on like from start to finish the preparation of the field. So I'm not even done with that video yet, right? Because next steps are we got to put in irrigation. We've got to put in deer fencing. And then I've got to also put on compost. So I will also be recording what that process looks like. But this was also a newer type of format. I figured having a conversation with Eric would probably be most efficient and useful for you. So if you found this video helpful, please give us a thumbs up. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions, and we'll see you next time. How do you feel?
Sore.
Already? We still have halfway more left. How do you feel, Chance?
Oh.